Converted Man here. Today we're going to look at absolute morality and homosexuality, or as I like to call it, absolute nonsense! One of the most popular arguments for the existence of God is the moral argument. Well, that's an appeal to popularity, and I don't know that I would call it the most popular, maybe the most used, perhaps? It states that God alone makes sense of objective moral values, and since objective moral values exist, then God exists. A large number of people today, including atheists and agnostics, believe in objective moral values. Again, appeal to popularity, and actually no, they don't. By and large, I've heard many atheists say that objective moral values don't exist, or objective morals don't exist. So, what would be great is some sort of citation from some sort of poll of atheists and agnostics showing how many of them believe in, oh, what am I kidding? Who am I kidding? I don't even know what I'm kidding. Go back to the thing. However, they do not agree with the Christian answer to provide a basis for those values. Sometimes, looking at what can be considered the Christian answer, I don't agree with it either. Say what? For instance, if someone says murder is wrong because the Bible says so, I disagree. To see what I'm saying, consider if I stated this: Jesus was crucified because the Bible says so. Is the Bible saying so the cause of Jesus being crucified? Or was Jesus' crucifixion the reason the Bible says he was crucified? No. You should disagree with it because it's circular logic. The Bible has yet to be proven to be a source we can rely upon before saying that murder is wrong because the Bible says it is. Same with Jesus. You sort of hint at the idea of circular logic with your rhetorical question, but then why not be more honest with your readers and say that the reason that you disagree with this thinking is due to logic? Oh, who am I kidding? You're not going to do that, are you, Slick? Wait. By Nick Peters, it's not Slick! Hallelujah! 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 Okay, so Nick, come on, you can do better! Just as the Bible writers wrote about objective history that happened before their record of it, so they wrote about objective morality that was known before they recorded it. Citation needed, but not given. You believe that's what the Bible writers did, but where's the proof for that pudding? So, if the Christian wishes to state that the Bible is a source of objective morality, or that one cannot know morality apart from the Bible, I will disagree. I also think that this is a bad apologetic approach, and here's why. Hey, we're on the same page here, but not really, because there's two reasons why that this is flawed. One, it's circular logic, and two, the argument that you're referring to is also logically flawed. I would have to analyze that argument as you're just referring to it, so you give a link to that argument, right? No, you didn't. Oh, of course you didn't. So if I analyze it, then I come back, and then I would be accused of doing a straw man because that might not be the version that you're referring to, so I can't analyze it. So I've got nothing other than, hey, there's this argument, and I'm not even going, screw it, back to the article. The biblical teaching. First, the Bible itself disagrees with this. In Romans 2, we are told that the Gentiles have the law written on their hearts, and they do the good deeds that the Bible requires. Note that these deeds are not ceremonial or civil in nature. When Paul talks about unrighteousness acts done by Gentiles, he is not talking about the failure to offer burnt sacrifices as Leviticus requires, or not observing the Sabbath, or wearing mixed fabrics. What he is talking about is what's called natural law. It is the ethics that can be found more or less in other great ethicists. Of course, there are areas of disagreement, but one can go to any number of great moral teachers and find these teachings. The Bible was not recording new information when God told the people not to murder. Okay, a few problems here. The idea that anything is written into your heart, and yes, I'm going to point out that your heart's an organ. I know it's a metaphor, but come on. It's nothing is written there. It should say these laws or ideas are written into your brain, but they didn't know what that was back then. So, and God didn't tell them. So I don't know. But anyways, so you're admitting this isn't new information. People already had the idea that murder was wrong without God telling them. So wait, is it written into our brains? Then why does God have to tell anyone anything? Why would anyone have to tell anyone ever? If it's really in our brains, wouldn't we just know it as fact? Would we never have to be told to do it or not to do it? But we do have to be taught this, so it's not written into our brains. That basically means the Bible got that wrong, and or so did God. It's kind of a big problem. Also, the fact that people know that murder is wrong, but still do it, doesn't that make it a moot point no matter what? Be it written in our brain or if we teach people that it's wrong? It seems that neither is an effective way to lessen how often people murder, but religion can get people to murder wholesale. So religion doesn't seem to be the answer to this problem either. But I digress. Back to the page. In our speaking out against homosexuality, we often point to Leviticus 18 and 20. Notice what the text says at the end about those sexual sins. It says that for practice of them, the people that lived in the land were being expelled. In other words, they should have known better. God was punishing them for activities that they should have known were wrong. Wait a minute, when the bleep has this idea been pointed out before this article? Hey, MacLachlan, Mike, did they ever point out that Leviticus 18 and 20 was about God punishing people for doing what they knew was wrong?
What? No. 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 No.
Okay, thanks for that insight. Now back to the...
You realize that Leviticus 18 had to deal with how to deal with temple stuff, and Leviticus 20 is about having sex with close relatives, right? Please tell me that people actually know that part. People who have actually studied know that, right?
But MacLachlan, Nick Peters says that it was about God punishing people for doing what they knew was wrong, which isn't correct. But even if it was correct, that wouldn't apply to modern-day homosexuals because they don't think that what they're doing is wrong. And even when they're told what they're doing is wrong, they still don't believe that. And we don't expel them from the city. So none of this could possibly apply to homosexuals of the modern day. Intellectual ignorance. The second reason is that the image it gives is one that the Christian does not wish to convey. It gives the impression to the non-believer that the Christian is just a mindless drone who would believe anything simply because it is in the Bible. It's impossible not to laugh at that from my position as a skeptic. You are taking everything that you are presenting from your interpretation of what the Bible says. You're not presenting anything new. You're repackaging what you think is already there. Now, it's not really there if you actually cared about what it said. But what's also humorous is that for the creationists, this basically says to them, you're a dummy because you're just taking the Bible for what it says. You're taking it literally at face value. And you shouldn't do that because you don't want to convey the impression that you're intellectually ignorant. You want to convey the impression that you're smart, even if you're not. And I can get behind the idea that yes, we want to convey the idea that you're intellectually intelligent, but we also want to be intellectually intelligent. So why not just tell your readers this is circular reasoning, this is circular logic. So don't say that it says it in the Bible, there you go. Say something else instead. I'm not saying that this is the case, but we Christians need to be able to think outside of our Bibles. Of course, we need to know our Bibles well, but we need to know how to interact with those who do not take it as an authority. Wow, this is like a breath of fresh air. Really, Nick, you should write more on CARM. Really, this is just way better. Think outside the Bible? What a concept. I agree. In fact, why not think about what the Bible might really be saying, Nick, rather than just the English version? Anyways, I like what you're saying here. Tell those people to think outside the box for a change. Rabbit trails. The third reason is that it gets us into several other debates that will be long excursions from where we've begun. We will end up having to defend the textual reliability of the Bible. Yeah, goodness forbid that you have to defend the textual reliability of the Bible or defend the fact that the Bible is any source that we should care about in the first place. No. We need a different argument that doesn't rely upon the Bible. So in other words, we need an argument that's not contingent upon God that homosexuality is wrong somehow, right? Because otherwise it's just a circular argument. We want to avoid the circular argument. So I'm waiting for him to do just that. He's not going to do that, spoiler alert. We will have to look at the social context of the Bible. We will have to deal with the so-called immoral passages of the Bible. There's a time and place for all that, and I do uphold it, but on a purely philosophical argument, we don't need to be getting into red herrings. Nick, since we're talking about red herrings, did you read any of the previous articles? They're full of red herrings. What do you mean the so-called immoral passages? You mean like stoning people to death? You mean that's okay, that's not immoral? 1 minute I like you, Nick, and then you ruin it with the next paragraph. As one who has debated this topic before, my stance has been to say that I am not interested in this point at what the Bible says. Me either! Let's toss the Bible out the window. Okay, what's your argument? Spoiler alert, he doesn't have one. I'm only interested in the point of defending objective morality. Now, you can attack Bible passages all you want, and we can get to those later, but for now, let's look at this point. Alright, he's either going to make an awesome argument for objective morality, or it's going to be epic fail. Place your bets now! Why is everyone placing their bets on epic fail? Go figure. I even put like 1,000,000 to 1 odds on the other one. Oh well. Homosexuality. Thus, when we debate homosexuality, the last thing we need to say is that homosexuality is wrong because the Bible says so. That does not engage the critic. We need to point to other data. We could use social statistics on homosexual relationships, which you never link to and you never do in your own article, Nick. So that's kind of a problem. Also, you would need to correlate that with heterosexual relationships and even out the numbers to show what is trending and not. Correlation or causation must be graphed out. It's kind of a big task and not one that has been done on this site at all. And the only time they did give references that MacLachlan covered was outdated references and cherry-picked and so on and so forth. So yeah, looking at the data and pointing to the data would be great, but you don't do it. So that's a problem. We could point to the spread of viral disease in the homosexual community. Yes, you could, but it really wouldn't matter because you would also have to show that there's more in the homosexual community than there is in the heterosexual if one evens the numbers out. And then you also would have to include communities where homosexuality is accepted openly. Do the numbers drop there? See, there's a lot of data points to consider that you're overlooking. Well, to be fair, you're not even looking, but you're saying that we could do this, but you're not doing it. You're leaving it up to the reader to do with zero resources to draw upon. Wow, thanks, Nick, for providing us with no service whatsoever. My personal choice is to point to the way that a family of a mother and father is that which is most optimal for a child. By a man and woman unit, we affirm that being a man and being a woman both mean something. Of course, that's further philosophical work that is for another time. What do you mean by optimal? In what way is it optimal? This really requires a ton of support. Single parents are excluded now, as well as other options for raising a child, a community effort, for example. This is just that whole black and white thinking again. It's an appeal to tradition that the nuclear family is the best way because it was so great in the 50s and we'll just leave it to beaver. Since I have brought up homosexuality, there's a special case we must have in mind. There are legitimate and bona fide Christians who do struggle with the homosexual desire and want them to go away. Which is completely backwards because there is nothing wrong with being homosexual or having those feelings. Period. There's nothing wrong with it. And anyone that is a Christian and is also homosexual should not feel bad about that. But yet, they're made to feel bad about it because of this improper doctrinal teaching about homosexuality that's not actually in the Bible. It is constructed from the English translations. It's doctrinology. It's not really what the Bible really says. I want to cite my favorite celebrity, David Young, the first Blue Power Ranger. He came out a while ago talking about how he tried to pray away his homosexuality, and it doesn't work because that's part of who you are. Wait, hold on. There's more. We as Christians dare not make promises Christ never gave. We should not say if you become a Christian, God will take it away. How many of you had all your desires for sin taken away when you became a Christian? We shouldn't say just pray about it. We don't need to say something negative about their character or lack of faith. You know, Nick, I don't like you anymore. I used to, but now I just don't like you at all. Lack of character or lack of faith? Really? So, poisoning of the well, because, I mean, obviously they have lack of character or lack of faith if they're struggling with homosexuality. Even though it shouldn't even be a struggle. There's nothing wrong with it. They should accept the way that they are, and you should accept the way that they are. But at least he did away with the pray it away trope. At the very least. It's ruined by the whole lack of character and lack of faith thing. But at least he got rid of that pray it away thing. But what's weird is he says that Jesus didn't ever say that you could do this. But Jesus does say, if you ask for it in my name, it will be given to you, and if 2 or more people are gathered in my name, it will be surely given unto you. There are more than one passages where Jesus basically promises that your prayers will be answered. But I guess you could be vague and ambiguous about that one. Well, he really meant that it is answered within God's will, in God's time. He didn't really mean what it says. See, because yeah, what we need to show is the love of Christ and offer good counseling to them. Now, of course, Christ could take away their desires, and sometimes he does that. But we can't promise it. And to do so is to prepare a person to become an apostate. Really, when has Christ ever actually taken away anybody's desire for anything? I know that there's a few out there that have claimed this, certainly. Of course, this is something we could actually test. We could subject the person that used to be a homosexual to pornography and see if they respond to heterosexual pornography only now, and they don't respond at all to homosexual pornography. But that would be ridiculous and bring science into the equation. So we're not going to do that. So I'm being silly again. So I guess we're saying that God can take away their abilities and desires or whatever, but He won't. And so just tell them that it's wrong. I guess Otherwise, they're going to be an apostate, which they still might become, because you're telling them that what they're doing is wrong when it's not wrong. And if they go, hey, wait a minute, I actually care about the Bible. I read the original translations here. That's not what this says at all. You're wrong. I'm not going to come to your church anymore because you're a false prophet. I'm going to look for a church that teaches the right way, and when they realize that no church does, because they all appeal to tradition, then they're going to become an apostate anyway. So, oops. To return to the moral argument, however, I really don't like it as it is, since the moral argument is meant to show that there are good actions to do. Well and good, I agree. However, I am not interested in just good actions. I am interested in good things. I am interested in good ends. I am interested in good natures. Morality is just part of it. Why stick with just part of something? Let's go for it all. So, let me ask this question. If you don't like the argument, then why are you citing it? And in fact, you don't actually link us to the argument, you just mention it, so it's not like an actual citation. It's just like, hey, you know that moral argument? Yeah, we're going to talk about that, even though I didn't even link to it or give it to you here. Yeah, I don't even like the way it actually is, because it doesn't do everything that I wanted. So make a better argument! This gets us to the question of goodness, and usually there are two common answers to the question. The first is that the good is what God wills, and the second is that good is God's nature. So, do what again? I guess we're in the rabbit hole right now. We're in beyond Wonderland. Okay. So how is he going to make sense of absolute morality and the idea that goodness is God and or God wills good, or a combination thereof? Because morals do not exist without ethics, and ethics cannot exist with absolute morality, because absolute morality just dictates to you what ought to and ought not to be done. You don't have ethics, so with absolute commands, which is what these would be, they wouldn't even be called morals. They would be you have to do this, period. So there would be no ethics, thus there would be no morality. But he's not going to go into all that. So okay, let's get something clear. If God wills something, it is good. If something is God's nature, it is good. However, neither of those are the definition of goodness, and that is what we're looking for. Okay, wait. I was wrong. I was wrong about everything, because clearly goodness is not good. Got it? Good. Which is not goodness. See, if God wills something, or it's God's nature, then it's good, but it's not goodness. And then the blue ant from CARM HARM 1 shows up and explodes, and only a few of you get that reference. Also, remember that when God willed all those people to get flooded to death, that was good! My brain. Biblically, we do not know good and evil, and we cannot know these apart from knowing God. Note that I am not saying that these can be known apart from God's existence. God's existence is necessary for good and evil to exist, but one does not have to be aware of God's existence to know good and evil. We can say that God's existence is what keeps the universe existing, but one does not have to believe in God's existence to know that the universe exists. Alright, everyone following along? Everyone keeping notes? There will be a test on this later. So, you can't know what good and evil is unless they're apart from God, but you can, because you can still know it, but then you can know it even though you don't know that there's God, but then you don't have any way to objectively say that it's good or evil, so it doesn't count unless you have God, and then it doesn't count unless you have this particular God that I'm talking about, and blah, 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 blah. Oh my word. Blah. Keep going. Maybe it will make more sense later. No, it won't. We also use the word good for several things that don't necessarily have a moral connotation to them. This is a good pizza. That is a good restaurant. This is a good book. That is a good TV show. I thought that movie was really good. In many of these cases, we are saying nothing moral about the object under question. We are saying it has a certain quality. Oh, bleep, natural language. Please tell me he isn't going to try to resolve the issues of natural language. He's going to try to solve the issues of natural language, isn't he? Yeah. Oh, this isn't good. It's gonna get bad. It's already bad. It's gonna get way worse. And to explain what those words mean, I'll write this paper. Aristotle said that the good is that which all things aim. And in classical Thomism, something is good insofar as it is perfect. For example, I can say I am perfectly human in that I have all the necessary attributes of being human. I would not say I am a perfect human, however, in that I do not live morally perfect. The idea is that the more something is what it was meant to be, the more we can call it good. This gets into final causality and other such causes. I highly recommend Edward Fiser's book Aquinas at this point. And I'd highly recommend a logic book or two, or a science book or two. Meh. Moving on. What is a good pizza? Is it the pizza that embodies what it is meant to be a pizza? What is a good book? Is it a book that embodies the qualities of what it is meant to be for its type of literature? Some descriptions could get difficult, but I hope by now the reader has the idea. So wait, if God wills a pizza, it's good. We can't know pizza apart from God. Or is it that is goodness still a separate thing from good? Or because you're saying the word good, and then you said earlier the word goodness was going to mean something different, and then you never defined it. You made the whole thing way more complicated than it needed to be. You explained nothing and added just more insanity, complexity. Let me try to clear this mess up if I can. Good and goodness are the same word. When we say good, we mean we like something, be it a deed, an action, a person, people, event, book, flavor, etc. So there you go. I might say good pizza because I like it. Good movie, I like it. Good morals, I like the morals. And so good is nothing more than a reflection of what I personally like. You, whoever you might be, might like other things. And that's really the key issue here. We can't have good be subjective because he needs a secondary word, also called good, that is objective. A God goodness that he wants to have in his argument. And so he has to fumble around trying to say that good means more than it means so that he can have it both ways. But unfortunately, it's just a mess of hodgepodge that goes nowhere and has no argument whatsoever to support it. Now, going back to the two answers, what if we say the good is what God wills? Then I am stuck wondering how we can tell the non-moral aspects that are good. Is a good pizza a pizza that God wills? Then if I overcook or undercook it, is that wrong since it goes against the will of God for proper pizza cooking? Oi! Not only did I undercook the pizza, but I also worked on a Sabbath to do it, and I used non-kosher material. Oi, 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 I better sacrifice some lambs. Oh wait, I ate them all. Oh, I am going to be a mussatst. That was the worst impression of a Jewish person ever. I'd like to now apologize to all the Jewish people. Sorry. Note that this doesn't tell us a definition of good. It just tells us that if God wills something, it is good. It gives me no power in being able to recognize what goodness is. What of the second? It's quite different in response, but it fails to the same problem. Is God's nature the definition of good, or is good a description of God's nature? If the former, then I wonder once more how to recognize other goods. Can I say that I am good since God is infinite and I am finite? Am I not going against his nature then by being finite? Thus I am not good? I don't know. Why do you keep asking me all these questions? You're the one that's writing the article. I suggest sticking with the approach I gave. Now, I did say that something is good if it has all the perfections according to its nature. In a look at the 747 argument I wrote here, see link below, I stated that the existence is God's nature. God has all the perfections of what it means to exist. He is a being without limitation. Thus, he is fully good, as there is no perfection he lacks, and he has nothing that can limit his nature. But God might have limits. If God can't sin, that's a limit. If he can't stop existing, then that's a limit. God really hates sin and doesn't want to be around it and has to have a blood sacrifice in order to cover it so that he doesn't see it. That seems like a limit to me. If God had no limits, then you would run into contradictions. So perhaps you want to say that God can only do that which is logically possible. Or as some people put it, that God will only do what's in God's nature, which is still limiting because whatever isn't in his nature is something that God can't do. So there are things, and there would have to be things, that God couldn't do, no matter how you want to turn that phrase. But who cares about all that? None of that matters right now. What really matters is how in the world any of this establishes absolute morals. And I don't know the answer to that. I guess I'll read that article in the 747. And there's no link at the bottom of the page. It just says that Matt Slick is the author, but it's not. This is Nick Peters. So that's kind of broken. In this way, we have started with goodness. This also helps us because we can see that actions can result in good ends, and that without good ends it makes no sense to do an action. The only reason one does anything is because they believe something good will result. And yet, if there is no objective goodness, one cannot say anything good will result. There will be no reason to do anything. I wonder what reality he lives in. People only do good because they think something good will come out of it? Or actually, he said, people will only do anything if they think something good will come out of it. That's not necessarily true. People do all sorts of kinds of things without thinking that good will come out of it. In fact, some people might go out of their way to make sure bad comes out of what they did. So, no to this idea. Just no. In fact, because this is so wrong... No. No! I told you can't be in my CARM HARM series videos.
Hey, how's it going?
Goodbye.
No, wait.
What?
I want to say something.
What do you want to say?
Matt Slick's awesome.
And now back to the article. Do we have an argument that can get us to God? We do! It was formulated in the 13th century by St. Thomas Aquinas, the famous medieval philosopher and theologian. It goes as follows. Okay, quick, put up the logical fallacy counter. Get the formal fallacy counter in here too. We're gonna need every single counter that I've got at my disposal. Quick, put them all on the screen right now. Do it! Do it! The fourth way is taken from the gradation to be found in things. Among beings there are some more and some less good, true, noble, and the like. But more and less are predicated of different things according as they resemble in their different ways something which is the maximum. As a thing is said to be hotter according as it more nearly resembles that which is hottest, so there is something which is truest, something best, something noblest, and consequently something which is uttermost being. For those things that are greatest in truth and greatest in being, as it is written in Mesphah II. Now the maximum in any genius is the cause of all that genius, as fire, which is the maximum heat, is the cause of all hot things. Therefore there must also be something which is to all beings the cause of their being, goodness, and every other perfection, and this we call God. St. Thomas Aquinas' arguments are very well known, and they're also very old, and they've also all been debunked already. This is nothing more than an appeal to analogy, and a non sequitur at the end. And there is association causation mixed in there as well. Just because there is a maximum amount of heat or a maximum amount of cold does not necessarily mean that there's a maximum amount of truth or goodness. Those things are too subjective. And just because you call it God doesn't mean that somebody else would call it God. And wouldn't the reverse also be true? The maximum evil and the maximum nastiness, would that be then Satan? Or the devil, or an equally powerful God, but a God that's evil? Or is non-existence worse than existence, so the maximally evilest thing can't possibly exist? I don't know. It just doesn't work no matter how you break it down on a logical level, and it's in severe needing of updating. I can't take this seriously without the author attempting to update a very old, worn-out argument. Plus it has logical fallacies. Notice that in all of this, I have not had to use the Bible. I've simply used what the average man believes. Appeal to meaningless statistics and special knowledge. How do you know what the average man believes? And, well, who's the average man? Who? Who is that? The average man fallacy, well, everyone knows this, or it's common sense, is not a thing. There is no such thing as common sense. I know people say it all the time, but there isn't. It's just common sense. No, there is no such thing. It doesn't exist. It's a meme. The average man, the common man, everyone knows this. No, not at all. Not everybody knows this, and certainly not within a bell curve. And if you want to make that point be something that I'm not going to be skeptical of, let's get some data points in here. No. As far as him not using the Bible, okay, sure, he hasn't done that, but he's appealed instead to antiquity and novelty in citing Aquinas. Who cares what Aquinas says? Where's your argument? Why don't you have one? I want your argument, not somebody else's. So if you can't be bothered to make your own argument, what am I supposed to be looking at here? And in fact, you haven't made any argument at all! Oh well, back to the thing. Now, have I established Christianity? Absolutely not! For that, we need to go to the Bible. So, in the end, you'll just appeal to circular logic, even though earlier you told your readers to not do that. Although you never said circular logic, and now I strongly suspect that you didn't use those words because you knew what was coming. You knew that you would have to use circular logic in the end. So you didn't want to advise your readers to not use illogic. You wanted them to avoid it for other reasons. And now here you are going to circular logic. You have to establish that the Bible is something that is true in and of itself independently from everything else before you can use it to establish Christianity. However, I have established an absolute morality. When the bleep did you do that? Even if I granted St. Thomas Aquinas' argument for God, which I can't because of the logical fallacies, at no point did you ever establish absolute morality. You talked about goodness and what it is, and you never got around to explaining to us, by the way, what goodness is. You just asked a lot of questions about it, but you never told the readers once what it was. Is goodness separate from good? What does it mean? You never explained it. As far as morality, you didn't say anything on the subject at all, other than it's good because God wills it, or it's good because it's God's nature. Okay, but how does that establish absolute morality? Is that absolute because God is absolute? Where's that argument? You don't make it. Now, once we have the unbeliever saying he agrees it must be in a theistic context, we can then discuss the differing religion. Hey, anyone else remember the title of this page? No? At this point, neither I do of the and in up, down, left, AB, start, select. Absolute morality and homosexuality. That kind of rhymes, doesn't it? Morality and homosexuality go together hand in hand. Unlike Slick and his best friend, Peter, I guess, is his man. Lobsters, lobsters, on my word. Why should it be Christianity instead of Judaism, Hinduism, Islam, Buddhism, the New Age movement, etc.?
Because it says in the Bible that the Bible says that it says in the Bible that it says in the Bible that God says that it says in the Bible that it says in the Bible. I believe it, so there it settles it, and that's what it says.
The first part does not need to be any more difficult than it is. We can have objective goodness, and we can do it in a way that avoids the Euthyphro dilemma. Okay, summarize time. The title of the page, Absolute Morality and Homosexuality. Homosexuality mentioned briefly at the start, then we skip along down the enchanted rabbit hole to the yellow brick road full of goodness versus good, and how can we tell if pizza is good? Is it because God willed the pizza? By the way, that is never answered. None of that's ever answered. And then we mentioned St. Thomas Aquinas' argument, and then we're talking about atheists at the end because why not? The best I can do is boil this down to if God exists, and then somehow absolute morals exist, which they wouldn't because divine command theory would destroy morals and ethics, and it would just be commands that we would have to follow, so we wouldn't call that morality, we'd call it something like a dictatorship or something like that. But nonetheless, if all of that's true, and if their interpretation of the Bible was also correct, which it isn't, then homosexuality would be wrong. But none of that is true, so homosexuality isn't wrong. And at no point does the connection between absolute morality and homosexuality being anything at all ever come together on this page. All I can say is I'm glad I'm done with this page. Moving on.